Just want to make sure. Get it. Okay.
All right, my name is Roberto. I'm one of the Admiral organizers for Black Men Build National. This is our last mass call. We decided to do it in the form of a book talk, a prolific book that I think everyone needs to know about and understand the concepts. We were very privileged to get the author of that book. So, since it is a mass call, we'd like to do it
In true, like, or fashion. Okay, thank you. In true mass call fashion, we start off with our values pledge, and then we have a section called Who Do You Love? And so I'm gonna let our brother Will come up and read our values pledge for Black Men Build. And before he does that, so everyone knows, Black Men Build is a grassroots political organization. Black men organizing ourselves across this nation to be truth tellers, thinkers, and ready to meet the moment spiritually, emotionally, in our communities for true liberation. So I have Will come up and read our values pledge.
Peace to everybody in person as well as virtually. I'm blessed to have you in front of me. So, we are critical thinkers. We are curious about this moment. We are coming together to take an active, responsible role in freeing our communities. We are transforming to meet the moment. We are bonded with Black women and all Black people in the fight for true freedom. Black people who choose to fight for the enemy or use our struggle for personal and or financial benefit need not apply. Again, peace.
Peace.
All right, so at this point, I want to introduce our moderator this evening. He is the head lead organizer for our New York City chapter of Black Men Build. We have 8 chapters, full chapters across this nation, and we have about 8 more that we are in process affiliate cities. So hopefully tonight you hear something that inspires you, whether you're on live stream. We want to kind of set the tempo on live stream as well. If you're in the chat, let's stay on topic. Let's be respectful. You can disagree, but disagree respectfully. All right, and yeah, and if anyone is obscene or obsessive in a fashion that does not warrant what we're trying to do, you will be exited out the live stream. With that being said, let's have some good energy, right? Let's have a good talk, and I'd like to turn it over to Brent to facilitate the book talk this evening. All right.
Appreciate you, Brother Buto. My name is Brent Maximin. I'm the lead organizer for Black Men Build in New York. Thank you for everyone in the room for being here, everyone joining us on our live stream. I have the honor and the privilege of introducing Dr. Jared Ball. Dr. Jared Ball is a professor of communication and Africana studies here in Baltimore at Morgan State University. He is the co-founder of Black Power Media, and he is the author of the text, the second edition of which came out this year, which we will be discussing today, which is The Myth and Propaganda of Black Buying Power. Jared, anything else you want to say about yourself or your work?
No, just that I'm honored to be here. Thank you, everybody, and everybody on. Thank you very much.
Cool.
Can you hear me all right? It is on, but I don't think. Is that it? Okay, there we go. My bad. Okay, my bad. That was my fault. Okay, sorry about that. All right, I'll keep that in mind. Anyway, my point is I'm honored to be here. It's a pleasure. Thank you very much. So peace to everybody for
who's here and those online. Thank you.
So your book is called The Myth and Propaganda of Black Buying Power. So for those who might not know, or for those who maybe might have the wrong idea, what is buying power? Who uses it? What is it trying to measure? What is buying power exactly?
So buying power is really just a marketing and advertising mechanism to redirect ad revenue towards commercial media outlets. It is a subset of a cost of living survey and set of concerns that developed around the turn of the 20th century in the United States, which were developed themselves to really just try to measure the pressure point at which labor would rebel off of not having enough to buy the products that they're helping to create. So around the turn of the century, the business and political elite of this country, wanting to quell potential rebellion, said we need to figure out, what I kind of wish I had done made in the book is equate it more directly to what I've seen with sugar in foods, where they talk about the pleasure point, that exact point that they measure where sugar will be just what it is, the addictive sweet and that will keep us addicted, but not too much that will say, oh, that's too much, and we turn away from it. This is so the point is, buying power is really just a marketing and ad revenue mechanism and a political ploy to manage the exploitation pressure point of labor. And then what I'm trying to isolate is how that got turned into a specific weapon targeting black people here in the United States to add to that initial function the goal of suppressing black radical consciousness, radical organization, and militancy. So I'll stop there.
No, that's really helpful. Thank you. And one thing that maybe some of you noticed, and I know that I noticed from your definition of buying power, is what it is not, right? Buying power in general is not wealth, right?
Correct. No, yeah, buying power is not a measurement of wealth, it's not a measurement of income, it's not a measurement of anything other than the perceived, and I'm arguing mythological value financially that those being targeted or measured can bring to the business community. So if I could just back up very quickly, one of the reasons I got into studying this many, many years ago was because of being in rooms like this. Oh, my bad, okay, thank you. Sorry if this is, all right, my bad. I could just hold this one. I think that might be the issue.
One or the other.
One or the other. One or the other. Sorry about that. But then it seems to fade out. Not fading out?
Yeah.
Give me that one. Okay, my bad. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Right on. So the issue for me was many, many years ago, being in many rooms like this in all kinds of radical black political spaces, primarily. But even if I was in more conservative spaces, there was this common theme of we have this buying power. And I would even be in rooms where someone would break down the horrific economic condition that black people are actually suffering, and then still at the end come back with, but we have this buying power. And I'd be sitting in the audience like, wait, I just saw you say we don't have anything. But then so it was just a matter of, and at some point maybe I'll come back to this because I think we are in a civilizational crisis of methodology right now. But all I did was just start to say, well, where are you getting this? And as I started to look, I saw that either people didn't know or the source was always the same, and it was primarily the Selig Center, and we could talk about the others that are now more involved. And then the Selig Center said itself, we're here only to exist. We primarily exist to help Georgia businesses, because they're based in Georgia, direct their ad revenue and maximize their marketing. And so we want to measure the so-called buying power of all these different communities. what I try to show in the book is where the Selig Center picks up on the origins that I mentioned in my first answer, to where, how they pick up on the origins of buying power and sort of re-popularize it, re-weaponize it, for the purposes of redirecting money for, it's not an assessment. They're not there to help black people or anyone else understand their economic condition. And they're very explicit in that. What I noticed was, long story short, by the time it gets misreported and poorly reported and falsely referenced and misunderstood, and people excerpt speeches from the past, or people have just honestly made mistakes in understanding what this was, it becomes power in the sense that we conventionally know what power means. And then we have people who are overly convinced through this wave of propaganda, black people in particular, that we do have this buying power, and if we just were better or more financially literate, we wouldn't be so poor. And our poverty is because of our decision-making and our bad financial literacy and our refusal to support one another, and all these things that are just factually not true. And it takes us away from understanding how capitalism works, how colonialism works, the function of advertising as a weapon in all of this process, and then it ultimately distracts us from the real radical organizing that we need to be doing. That's the fastest way I can do it. Yeah.
I mean, there are.
I'm sorry. Just to be clear.
Yeah.
Right, because I want to be clear. I'm gonna get to your where you started, because I usually don't do that. Buying power is, again, just to be clear, it is not a measurement of wealth. It is not a measurement of income. We do not have this $1.whatever trillion that we're just sitting on and foolishly throwing away. That doesn't exist and is not real and is completely misrepresented based on a number of different things we can come back to. I just wanted to be clear.
No, I appreciate it. And then there are a number of things that you said in that answer that I want to get back to also. There's something you said last year in conversation with Asa Shaw, one of Black Men Bill's co-directors, that I thought was really clear, that I just want to bring up. You said, because when I asked you, is buying power wealth? Clearly not, right? Buying power is this propaganda. It's not a real metric in any sense. Correct. But on the question of wealth, you said there are no black people in this country, as things currently stand, that have a capacity to build actual wealth. That is pure fantasy that is only supported by well-promoted and positioned propagandists. So how then do we get from, or how did this myth come about, that black people have this wealth that we're just spending wrongly, or we're spending in the wrong place?
So there's been what I try to do in this book is show just that from these beginnings, the short answer is that it was one of the mechanisms used after the formal end of plantation enslavement, to say, we see black people trying to get into business, they're getting into politics as part of the whole anti-black, what Du Bois talked about in Black Reconstruction, the move to put black people back into slavery, as Du Bois. It's this wave of propaganda that says that beginning with those cost of living surveys, and then that get trickled down through false reporting and the encouragement of a black business class. The fantasy is sort of developed that, well, if the people in my community who are going to a white business person to buy their products go to me to buy those products, then this will be good for all of us. So some of it is, and so I'm not trying, and by no means am I ever condemning people for thinking of this or moving in that direction, and by no means am I condemning all black business as evil. I'm simply saying the idea that it is a solution to the collective national problem of black oppression has been cultivated as a mechanism to stop us from having a real revolution. So a business class gets evolved and starts falling into class pitfalls, starts falling into just misunderstanding the scope of the problem, and starts passing it down. And then once and then really and then once we get to the rise, as I point to another turning point in the post-World War II moment, in the rise of John H. Johnson and Ebony and Jet magazine, and a black press and a black media class, ownership class that recognizes the only way to survive is capturing ad revenue. It's John H. Johnson that creates the Selling the Negro documentary, which is specifically meant to attract ad revenue from white corporations. It's targeting white audiences with the idea that black people aren't a threat. We're not a problem. We want to be middle class just like you. And if you give me money to advertise your products, I will reproduce your vision of analysis in my press. And I will take to my people that black capitalism, black entrepreneurialism is the solution. We don't need certainly communism or socialism. We don't need Pan-Africanism. We don't need radical nationalism. We don't need any of those threatening movements. We just need to consume better, start our own businesses, and then the white capitalist, the white elite world is loving it. Nixon weaponizes this again in the 70s and says, no, specifically, we're going to redefine black power away from Kwame Ture and them and define it as black business and black mainstream electoral politics. And then over time, and this is one of the trickier moments for me, is that some of our luminaries get caught up in moments in their lives and careers in repeating this, and then that gets recycled in the black commercial press all the way up to today, and even just yesterday, I see again on Instagram where somebody has taken a clip from Malcolm X in the early 1960s, I think around 1960 specifically, saying black business is the solution. And then I'm like, did you ever notice that we don't hear from Malcolm in these clips past 1963? There's a reason you're seeing this exact comment. Anyway, so this is how it just gets regurgitated over and over and over again. And then as I also try to show, just there's so many references to it. And people don't even, I think, realize how often it's referenced from church pulpits to mosque sermons to political spaces like this, to the most militant, to the most conservative, in all of these various press spaces, buying power, spending power, financial literacy. And then we just think it's real. And then we really fall into the trap that, oh, that's why we don't have it together. And that's what I'm saying is the mythology. It's fantasy. It's weaponized psychological warfare, really. It should be the psychological warfare of black buying power. Myth is too soft.
Yeah. That's powerful. So the myth is, if you want to say it as briefly as we could, one, that buying power somehow equates to wealth is not true. And then two, that somehow if we change our spending habits, if we redirect this fake buying power into the right places, that is going to change the relationship that black people have with this country, right. Correct? So, and I know you started talking about this already, but if that is what the myth is, who is propagating this then? Like who is responsible for spreading and upholding this mythology?
I mean, right now, this is the biggest contradiction that I didn't intend to confront, even realize was this much of a problem when I initially started this research. It's the black commercial press. They are the ones who primarily at this point, working in league with Nielsen, McKinsey, the advertising community in general, they want to capture that revenue. They want that ad revenue. So before he got in his most recent trouble, Diddy was doing this for Revolt, saying, and he got in his black bag and started doing his whole thing. They disrespect the black business community by not advertising with us. Roland Martin is enormous with this. Like, this is like every few months he does a whole special where it's like, and he's got the beautiful dashikis and he's got his fists up and he's like, they disrespect the black community by not giving us. But what he's saying is the white advertising community isn't giving us enough money. And the white advertising community is saying, well, primarily because you don't have enough money to buy enough of our products to make it worth anything. And plus, enough of you are doing enough of this already that we don't really need. I mean, you already do it, And then the unspoken real purpose for me in all of this is to make sure that there cannot be room, because for instance, in conventional media and communication studies courses or books, They will tell you advertising controls our content. But what I don't think they do is explain why that is or the political context of that. It's not just so because an advertising community wants to manage or make money and manage it. It's for the suppression of ideas, the management of consciousness. This is the mechanism within capitalism that allows that process of colonialism to occur. You have a handful of advertisers that have $600 or so billion every year that they sprinkle around. And that assures, by definition, that you're going to you want this money, you better have this kind of content. You better not be talking about left of Democratic Party politics. You better not have any of those, again, communisms and socialisms and Pan-Africanisms and national. You can't have real discussions of any of that. And then you have to even worse, you have to platform, like, to me, grotesquely black capitalist efforts where you have black people. And I'm happy to name the names, but John Hope Bryan in particular. I'm thinking of Roland Martin. John Hope Bryan and people like that, whose whole business model is bringing black people and money to white businesses, and they become the people who perform the financial segments on these news outlets, and so that you can see the media, the environment collapsing on a community, and you get this echo chamber everywhere you go of these beautiful, well-spoken, talented black people saying, yo, circulate your dollar, invest, support our businesses, and we will get there, and then we can get the political power. And that's, that's exactly the opposite. That's not how anyone got wealthy. That's not how anyone with wealth got wealthy. But they tell us, no, start a food truck. We come through and wipe out a whole community with guns and weapons and viruses and diseases, and we'll enslave people and colonize and take all the land and force you to work. We do that. You start a food truck and circulate your dollar and get your financial literacy together. Then one day when you catch up to us, you can engage the political arena. And this is to me just bananas backwards. But it's done on purpose. And this, I'll stop here, but Malcolm X was right. 50, 60 years ago, the United States has perfected the science of image making. And if you take any time to study the history of US mass communications or propaganda and the shaping of public opinion, they do not play. This is not a game. This is psychological warfare. We were just talking about Orasami Burton's brilliant book earlier tonight, Tip of the Spear. This is what he's showing. He's showing the prison aspect of the mass communication side that I'm trying to, and can never do what he did, but what I'm trying to show. As mass comm is being developed in this country, the prison system is being developed, and the tactics they're doing inside the prison system to mess with us psychologically, they expand beyond the prisons to the rest of us, using the same tactics, the same state agencies, the same investment, with the same goal of suppressing dissent. In prisons, it can get more overt. Out here, they just put it as marketing and branding and commercial advertising. And we fail to see the important similarities.
You mentioned something in there that I want to talk a little bit more about how we have, especially these so-called black capitalists who come back to communities or come to our communities and say, hey, this is how you build wealth, this is how you make money, even though that is not how they have made their money. Now, we didn't even say wealth, right? Because we talk about the fact that black people don't actually have real wealth in this country.
Zero by 2053,
right,
according to some, yeah.
So how is it then that we still, and I know you said, you quoted Malcolm on how America has perfected image making, right? America has perfected mythology and propaganda. But how is it then that we are still buying into this propaganda from people who haven't even benefited from the things they're selling to us, right? They're telling us, hey, do this, but that's not how they've gotten their money.
I have to give, as they say, the devil its due. I mean, if again, what has been done here is really, I hate it, but it's a beautiful, brilliant, amazing thing. The ability to mess with what they call the cognitive infrastructure of hundreds of millions of people, and to put the kinds of effort and time, and I mean, you know, in Surveillance Valley, they're talking about, the book is talking about they're in the jungles of Vietnam, messing with people with messaging, thinking specifically how they're gonna bring that same tactic back here to target us. My point of that is that they are working very hard to mess with us, because we are a threat. We are permanently considered a threat, an insurgents, in the problem of insurgency. That's why they are involved in counterinsurgency on a regular basis. And then yes, but I also understand it. It's if you're not involved in political organization or constantly involved in spaces like this, it's easy to turn on and Earn Your Leisure and see this beautifully set with Steve Harvey dripped in everything he's got, telling everybody about investing in crypto and real estate. And then to your point, it's easy to lose sight of the fact, but that's not how you got famous and rich, Steve. What about the part where you slept in the park and on the bus when you didn't have comedy gigs? And what about the part where you worked on your craft and went to open mic nights every night for decades and did all this and did all to hone your craft and then to perform in a certain way that advertisers and marketers would want to hire you repeatedly to put you on every single thing? And then you got here and took another bag to tell an audience to invest to get rich. What? So and then you go, I mean, my beloved Morgan State, there's a brand new, relatively speaking, business school. I don't know to what extent that institution is designed to teach people how capitalism works so that they can change it or get rid of it or redistribute the wealth that's created or to better understand how wealth is created. So again, from every angle, I quote it all the time, Marshall McLuhan was right. They have created an environment where the fish don't discover water because an all-pervasive environment is always beyond perception. We're born into this world, and from day one, we're being told versions of this. It's put in movies, it's put in it's put in music, obviously. Jay-Z's whole career bag and you'd be rich, you'd be good. And so it's just very complicated. So the more we're doing this, the more you all are doing this kind of work, the more people are gathering to raise critical questions. I love that the preamble to the principles. The first line, if I heard you correctly, is "We are critical thinkers." That's the dopest thing I've ever heard. I'm like. Because the first thing I get mad at, people say, oh, you do it too much, you overthinking this. What? You read too many books. What? What? You're not thinking enough. Like my man Hiram said, you don't read, beloved. No, I'm just saying. But we're encouraged out of it. The work being put into this is not something inherently wrong with black people. There's not, which is part of the mythology. It's not black people are poor because we didn't. By the way, I just read an article after I published this, which really pissed me off, to be honest, because I would have loved to build on it. But there was this brilliant article that Sister Erica, that works with us on BPM, sent me for her own work, which is about how financial literacy in Canada was specifically used by the French descendants as a mechanism of genocide against the indigenous population. Because, not financially, I'm talking literacy. The use of the phrase literate, because if you can't read in French and if you can't read in English, then you're a savage and don't deserve to live or have land. And it's the same thing, but the point I'm getting at is the same process is done to us here right now with financial literacy. So we can read and write in English well enough that they can't say you're not literate in that sense, but they can say you're not financially literate. So that's why you don't know how to do this, that, and the third, and why you're broke, this, that, and the third. And what they're really saying is you deserve it. You're a savage with your financial illiteracy. And that's why when we steal from you and take from you and you don't have no money, that's not our fault. It's not really our fault. And that's what I find pernicious about all this, and is frustrated.
Yeah, and that brings me to my next question, right? Like, what is the danger in this mythology? Like, if there is such a thing as a harmless myth, clearly this is not one, right? Because I think the problem that a lot of people have with this, with wrapping their heads around it, is, well, what's wrong with buying black? What would you say to that? Like, what's wrong with
Nothing.
supporting black business?
There's nothing wrong with supporting black business. It's just not going to solve the problem of poverty and inequality and wealth and all the other issues. And I tried to deal with this a little bit, but the short version is black businesses target black people. Black people don't have any money. It's on some level not that much more complicated. Black businesses, the favorite stat that I discovered working with some colleagues, Diedrich Muhammad and others, is from 1992 to 2012, black people created 2 million plus businesses and the capture of the national sales revenue went down from a paltry 1% to like 0.3%. The point is that black people can't create businesses in the sectors of the economy that generate real wealth. Black businesses don't have enough to hire many people. They don't have benefits. They're not paying people. In fact, most black businesses pay people below the average national salary. And again, because and we see it all the time. This is why, and people get mad when they see these people, they get to a certain size and then they sell out, or they sell to the white business that buys them up. Well, that's ultimately what you want in the capitalist economy. That's the goal, to get big enough to a bigger, because you can't expand. And white businesses know this. They're doing the same thing, because at a certain point you need venture capital to. I don't know if anybody saw it, but the Washington Post during the pandemic did a story about this brother who was making puzzles in his basement or something like that. And when the pandemic started, they were like, support black businesses, and his puzzle thing started to blow up. But then later on in the story, he's down there saying, but at a certain point, I can't benefit from it because I can't make but so many puzzles. I can't ship but so many puzzles. I can't take but so many orders. So he would have to get venture capital to expand so he can get more machines, to make more puzzles, to get more trucks, to ship more puzzles, to get more space, do all of this stuff that you have to do. And eventually, if you wanted to become a national or international puzzle conglomerate or whatever, you gotta get, the big boys gotta get involved. The hedge funds, they're sitting around waiting. That's really what I'm trying to say. So support, my only problem with the support black business claim is that it allows for conservative, reactionary black capitalists to claim that they're doing something good for the community when they're really just trying to rip their own people off. And there is a segment that builds off of that, and then it takes advantage of the people who are trying to do co-ops and using business to build community and do whatever it can do to a certain extent, and are not caught up in that mythology. So that's but the idea of supporting black business, I've 100% to the best, as much as possible. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's, speaking of myths, that's a common misunderstanding, right? From the work from your scholarship, and for people who have said similar things critical of this mythology around black business, is that, or black buying power, it's not that supporting black business is wrong, right? If I want to buy a cookie or a chocolate or a candle, sure, I prefer if I can support a business run by my people. I think the danger, as you say in your book and in your work, is believing that that's our path to black liberation, right? Yep. Like, we can't buy black our way to freedom, which is part of the danger of this propaganda.
Yeah,
right?
And what I added in the second edition is some reference to the work of Abram Harris, who I think, interestingly, 100 and some years ago was already pointing this out. And he was saying this buy black stuff don't work. It allows for, and he went more than I did to say that black capitalists, black business owners are the biggest problem, I think the biggest exploiter of the black community. I wouldn't go that far. But his point was in some ways, I think, correct, in the sense that Yes, so just that. There are those who will take advantage of the situation and say, look, I'm just trying to get paid. And if I got to put on a red, black, and green, or if I got to just tell black people to buy, and I got to say buy black, or the worst ones are not even that level. It's the Byron Allens and people like that or the Diddy's who will get real black when it comes time to get ownership of a channel or to get ad revenue. And they come before their community and say, support me, because in supporting me, you are supporting you. And there's shadiness in that. That is different from what I think many in the community are trying to do when they start a business and want to use that business to improve the community. So it's just that. Once it goes from an attempt, an effort to do something to this is the solution, or a solution even, I think we've run into the problem.
Yeah, and something you referenced a couple of times tonight, and I've also heard you in other talks talk about, is the uptick of this since the start of the pandemic.
So I honestly haven't done the enough to prove the claim, but it certainly feels like there's more. My Google alert is still firing on a daily basis with some reference to buying power somewhere. It's shifting a little bit in terms of, and I sometimes hope it's because of me, but sometimes shifts now to more use of spending power, which I think is meant to mess up my Google alert. Sometimes I'm like, why are you doing that? Stop playing. And it's really shifting also to taking on the weaponized form, because buying power is actually applied to every segment of the community. If you set a Google alert, you see it's applied to everything from municipalities to, it's everything. But when it comes to black people, that's where you start seeing it. Oh, this is the solution. This is the salvation. This is the revolution. And it's starting to happen more with Latinos and a little bit with indigenous people. I'm seeing a little more of Latinos. You could get free like black people did with your buying power. See how free those black people are over there? And to the indigenous, they're like, come on now. Look at the black folks. Look at the Latinos. I think they're saying, what was it, a few billion now? 90 billion? They were trying to say indigenous people having buying power. It's like, where are you? But it's all a concoction of phony fugazi numbers that they say themselves are estimates and projections. They even admit we don't have any real way of determining this number because it ain't real. It's just a marketing thing. So our ways of putting it together are really unclear and estimates and guesses. But it's because, again, the point is to make sure if you all want to start rebelling, because we're not going to stop oppressing you. But if you want to start rebelling, don't. Just circulate your dollar and start a business.
So we've kind of established what the myth is and talked about the propaganda. What does it cost us? And I know something that you have said is that one of the things that this myth does is it absolves structure and the state for the conditions and the responsibility for the remedy to those conditions of black people. So what is the cost then to us, to our people, of believing in this mythology and of propagating it?
I mean, to me, the biggest cost, the biggest cost is the damage it does to radical consciousness. That it to any extent it walks us away from spending more time thinking about our revolutionary traditions. It's again a problem. It is, to me, a well-demonstrated fact that this is not a path to improvement, and we're witnessing material conditions worsening as we speak. And I'm sorry that I'm apparently messing up the mic on some up here, but yeah, sorry. And it also, I think, and as I've also mentioned, that it encourages, so that's one problem. It walks us away from radical consciousness. Another major issue is that, and maybe my sort of biggest pet peeve, is that it really does have a lot of black people convinced that they are the cause of their own poverty. And it really does have a lot of black people convinced that consciously or not, like, we just don't deserve any better. We're just not as good as that community. We're not like the Jews or the thems or the that ones or the this is, and then after that, it walks us away from critical analysis as to how capitalism works, why these certain segments of these communities can do certain things that certain segments of our community cannot do. We walk away from all of that, and then we walk away from the real science of revolution, and we get caught up in a lot of mysticism, we get caught up in a lot of reactionary conservative politics, and it hurts all of the beautiful traditions that have been, aggressively suppressed. I mean, to be fair. So yeah, that's. I'll leave it there for now, at least.
No, that's a great answer. And then, how should then, because one of the things that I enjoy about your work is that it is accessible, right? I think, and it challenges a concept that a lot of people misunderstand. Because, especially in the last few years, we hear all this buy black, support black business, over and over. Again, like you said, nothing is wrong with it. But then it makes us feel like, oh, if we just take more responsibility, if we spend our money the right way, that is going to change our material conditions. So, yeah, sorry, and I was going to ask, like, so for black people who are coming to your work, who are interested in being entrepreneurs, or maybe even if they're interested in cooperative economics, how would you want them to, or what would you want them to take away from your work? Or how would you want them to engage with your work?
I would just want them to understand the limitations of that, and to understand that there's a world of radical politics that needs to be developed parallel to those efforts, and to just be honest with themselves. If you want to be an entrepreneur because this is your way to get over, to survive, to do your thing, this is your job, this is your hustle, cool. I mean, seriously, like, I'm not like, do that. To the extent you're not exploiting or hurting people, yeah, do that. But please just be honest, like, and recognize the limitations is what I'm asking in my work, that this is, and not, or resist the temptation to promote yourself or that effort as a revolution. That would really be it. Any more than I would say to it's not any different than I would say to an artist or to an academic that would think, man, I wrote that song, I wrote that book, I'm good. Revolution, I've contributed to the revolution, I'm good. Read my book, and that's the revolution. Like we have to recognize the limitations of that. Sorry about the bite. Like, I mean, we could be proud of our work. We could be wanting to share our work. We could want people to buy our work. But we just have to recognize that if we want a revolution, if we want a better world, we have to join political organizations. We got to expand our radical consciousness. We got to do things that are unsanctioned. We got to get off mics and lives. We got to do all of that stuff, that hard work, and that's cool. So, and then I think it would also allow us to catch some of the frauds who are misrepresenting the struggle and misrepresenting a connection or an affinity for the community, just so they can get a bag. We should also, by the way, again, I keep asking, as I ask my students every semester, I borrow it from an old professor that got along in school, but in classes, but he always had this point that I really appreciate. Interrogate your preferences. How do you know what you know, and why do you like what you like? How did they make this conclusion? Where are they getting this information from? So, like, when to your point about the encouragement that we buy black, this is, I think, can be readily connected to that $50 billion corporate post-George Floyd money drop that they announced. And if you read some of the discussion of it, almost, I can't remember exactly, but an overwhelming amount of that money went specifically to nonprofits for financial literacy programs, for business development, for entrepreneurialism. So Jay-Z and Jack Dorsey can go back to Marcy and start a blockchain Bitcoin class. I can't even, and the people there were calling them out. I was loving it. Imagine that. You made billions and come back to the hood, and you want me to take a blockchain class? Like, you gotta be kidding me. This is what we made you rich for? Nah, man, where's the, anyway, but to ask those questions, or to build on that, on those initial questions, we need people to think about the organizational efforts, the political education. Anyway, so, I don't know if I got to you.
No, you did. I'm glad you brought up Jay-Z and that crypto, the Marcy crypto whatever project. Look, I think Jay-Z's been an enemy of the people for a long time. That's my opinion. Not Jay-Z fans, don't blow up Black Men Bill's social media. But I think, that crypto education, which is, basically financial literacy specifically for crypto that he announced in Marcy projects last year, I think it was, maybe the year before. I found that to be especially insulting, right? For the reasons that you just talked about. Especially this is somebody who, in an album that critically people responded, the 4 album, about being mature and blah, blah, blah. And one of the things he said in there is he wishes he had invested in Dumbo, which is wishing he had contributed more to the gentrification of his own neighborhood. And you talk in your text and in your work about the role of celebrities and Black celebrities, Black business executives, and you talked about Black business leaders as well. Can you say more about that, about what is their role specifically in fueling this propaganda and upholding the system? And if we are to hold them to account, what do you think that looks like?
I think I want to purposely avoid the second part because I don't want to put any of my own shortcomings and limitations on anyone when they think about the answer to that question. So I'm going to leave that part alone. The role that they play is a neo-colonial one. They are here to, Jay-Z literally, when he said that line, when we're past kneeling, we're time for ownership in the NFL, and they took a contract from the NFL for his Rock Nation. That's the role. And then he presents it and tries to represent himself and is supported in doing by the media environment, the record labels, the algorithms, the advertisers, the mechanism that produced Jay-Z in the first place, supports this effort, encourages this effort, works with this effort. And what I actually found interesting, first of all, separate, what I added in the second edition, because I wanted, in the first edition, this was a shortcoming, one of the several that really bothered me, that I didn't expand on this point, that when Jay-Z said he wished he had bought that Dumbo section of Manhattan or Brooklyn or whatever, so he could have had money in this expanding, gentrifying community. One, I wish I had made that point more clearly, so I'm glad you did that. But what he leaves out is the fact that by the time you would have had enough money, Jay-Z, to buy anything there, it was already all bought up by David Walentis or whatever his name is. He had already bought up that whole area. So my point is, even if you thought you would have had enough money, you still would not have had anything to buy. It had already, the Marxist point about the primitive accumulation of wealth had already occurred. The land was already divided up, the money divided up, the industry divided up. This idea that, but if I had just invested earlier, that's the mythology. The same thing, and we're seeing it again with the Bitcoin stuff. It's already bought up by everybody. The mining is consolidated. The platform, platforms are consolidated. Everything is already. All we're being invited to do now is increase the already existing value of those who already got it all. So That's, all right, so that was what, that, oh damn, now I forgot the other part I was gonna say. Jay-Z, maybe it'll come back, my bad.
All good.
I hate when I do that, sorry.
No, it's good. All good, all good, bro. So I know we want to get to Q&A and take some questions from folks here and folks on YouTube. But the last thing I want to ask you is, for the arguments you make in the text, what actions would you take? What actions have you seen organized formations take that have inspired you or sparked your imagination? Where would you direct? And I don't even want to say individuals, because I think part of the solution to this is join organizations. But where would you direct individuals and also organizations, action-wise?
Again, I almost feel the same way about the action. I don't want my political imagination and the limitations there to impact anybody else negatively. I want everyone to expand their radical imagination. But some of the things I'm thinking, I'm inspired by the development of Black Men Build. I'm inspired by Black Alliance for Peace and community movement builders and Black Power Media and some of the other things I see happening, Leaders of Beautiful Struggle. I'm inspired by that kind. I'm inspired by the labor movement stuff. I'm inspired by all of the efforts and tendencies towards disruption. And then sort of, I guess, in terms of a focus, I'm more interested in, I want us to focus on all of the wealth that's being created, how it's being created, and where it's getting distributed, because we all have already contributed to that. So I focused on the GDP and the 23 or whatever $1 trillion gross domestic product, which is really just a measurement of all the wealth created for the people that own the economy. And if all this money is floating around, why the hell are we arguing about how many businesses we need to start? I don't want to have to start a business. Why do I have to be a good businessman to live? What if I'm just bad with business? What if I just don't give a damn about money? I can't eat, I shouldn't have health care, I should not have a decent home to live in? So no, if the economy is 70+% consumer based, then when I go and buy something, my contribution should be as valued as much as the person I'm buying it from. And the wealth that transaction creates should get distributed better. Why is it all going to the people that own the owning of the owning? We don't even see the owners anymore. The CEO is maybe the best we get, and they're not the owner. They're just a high-paid employee. So why are they getting all the money when we paid for M&T Stadium? We paid for did we pay for Orioles too? Camden Park? We paid for that too. Why are they the only ones making the money? All of our schools should be free. Every pothole in this city should be paved over with gold at this point. Like, it should be like, why is Morgan fussing with Hopkins, fussing with Towson, fussing with this one, fussing with that one, when all these people are eating crazy amounts of, it's ridiculous. And then they turn to us and they're like, no. You fight with her, fight with him, fight with this one, fight with that one, and you start a food truck, you start a t-shirt company, you start a podcast, and then you circulate your dollars and you catch up to us. Meanwhile, we're just gonna sit here and we'll literally create trillions of dollars during the pandemic and give it to businesses. We'll turn around and give $14 billion to Israel to bomb some more Palestinians. But no, but you start your business, get your t-shirt company together. Invest in Bitcoin. It's like, wait a minute, you just public policyed your way into trillions of more dollars. Right. Why don't we just redistribute? And then I read more recently that the wealth being created by the beyond the measurement of the money flowing to all of these companies that own everything, the wealth, the overall wealth is not even, the GDP isn't even close. The overall wealth created, I believe, is like $190 trillion or something like that. So people are That's what I want us to be thinking about. I don't, and again, my joke is, people old enough, is I want to be very Frank White about it. If there's a nickel bag in the park getting sold, I want to cut. I don't want to have to be in every transaction. I don't want to have to be making every bit of delivery. If it's happening, I want to cut. I'm a human being in this society. I have taxes taken from me. I go to work. I joke all the time, I have 2 beautiful children, a wonderful wife, a house with a fence. I served in the military. I went to war. I've run for president. And I still have to struggle. And I have it good. So what are we doing all this? Like, if I have to struggle this much and I have it good, what are we doing? What are we doing? And so that's what I want us to figure out. And I want us to get more angry about it, more disruptive about it, more analytical and critically thinking about it. I want us to get less mystical about it. And I want us to get more offline, and all the real answers will emerge there. That's why it's not even a fear of being on camera, it's that I don't want to limit anything. My imagination is not broad enough for this problem. I just want to, so really all I'm trying to say with the book and anything else is I just want to, let's refocus our energies away from this nonsense about buying power and black capitalism more broadly. We gotta get away from that. All the rest will solve itself later, as we were proving up until the last suppression level, a generation ago. That suppression was required to make sure that we would be here asking the same question with the level of confusion. So, I'll stop here, but Dhoruba bin Wahad says all the time, by the way, I would add his argument, we need to be looking at the police unions. If we want an action, get rid of the police unions. Why are they acting? Police are not workers. They are armed agents of the state. Why are they acting like workers with labor unions? Which misrepresents and propagandizes and rebrands what a union and workers are. They're not workers. But he also says we've already done all this stuff. We've already won these battles. And it's really just psychological warfare that has us convinced that it hasn't happened and we have to do something else again. And let me really stop here by saying one more thing, sorry. Because people always tell me, well, Jared, we've tried all your radical stuff already and it didn't work. We now should try the business thing. And my point is that's exactly, if anything, it's opposite. If maybe there's an equal or paralleled history to both wings, so to speak. But if anything, we've already tried the black capitalism thing for 150 years. From the day the boot was off of our neck, the slightest bit, black people started business immediately. Black capitalism immediately. Co-ops even, immediately. All of that was shown to be insufficient. Not that these efforts and people are bad, the efforts themselves are just insufficient. We already figured that out and got more militant and got more radical. The suppression came and now we're back here acting like we've already tried the radical stuff and haven't tried the no, we've been did the business stuff. All right, let me stop.
No, that was brilliant, and that's also a perfect place for us to take a pause for a couple of minutes so we could switch out your audio, and then we're going to go to questions from folks in the room and from folks on YouTube. Thank you so much for that.
We'll get this mic thing situated, and then we're going to have questions from the audience and questions from the live stream. Give us about 5 minutes.
The problem is that like so just or the other off, it'll be fine by me. So do you want to add it? You hold or not?
It's up to you, whatever. I think this looks cool. Okay, right on. Let's go with that then. Run it back up through there. And then, just a little bit confused. If it's like this, does that work? Or, is that good? Is that good? Is that
Check.
testing 1 2
Check.
1 2 1 2? Maybe I do need to hold it.
Upwards a little bit.
Yeah.
I got you.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right.
Test 1, 2. Test 1, 2. I think it's working. I think so, right?
Yeah, I got to revamp everything.
Okay.
So I can say, put this on channel, the other channel.
You right, young guy. Young guys handle it. You right.
All right.
Great job, sir.
Oh, I appreciate you.
And I appreciate the real work.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Can they still hear us?
Good now. And you got the blue light, so yeah, you're right there.
Oh, man. So how long you been at CUNY?
City for 2 years. This is my second year at City, and before that I was at Brooklyn College for 2 years.
Okay, right on.
4 years ago.
What's your teaching load like?
3.
3?
Yeah, 3 and 3.
Yeah, okay. That's not, it's not, I'm always asking because I'm on a perennial 4-4, so I'm just like, yeah, forever.
One of mine is
So, you're going to keep building power with your team.
UNT.
You'll have the mic.
Okay.
If you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat so we can field those questions and make sure that you have an opportunity for those questions to be heard and responded to. I was remiss when we started. When we do our mass calls, we have a section that we call "Who Do You Love?" And I was kind of in the moment and missed that section. So I want to, if I could, quickly go back and keep the sanctity of our Black Men Build mass calls. And in this section, we ask the brothers, and we'll even ask our sisters here because we're so thankful for you to come out. Who do you love? So I'm going to extend this to the individuals, people in this room. 90 seconds to talk about who do you love, and we do this just to again show as the full range of who we are as men, who we are as humans. And so in this who do you love section, I want to put it out there to ask a few of you to indulge me and just talk about who do you love for 90 seconds. All right. And I'll bring you the mic. Anybody want to start us off?
After you. Okay. Hi, everyone. So it's my first time being here, first time ever knowing about Black Men Builds. And I gotta say, it's difficult to choose one person. So I'm gonna talk about the idea of men in my life, Black men. I love a kind man. I love a gentleman. And not in the traditional sense, I guess, of like what you wear, how you carry yourself, but basically your value and how you see that within your family at the various unit, as the core unit of reproduction, and how you carry that along with you in your day-to-day life. And I'm very excited for the idea of having a Black men community, because I think that is very much needed for so many different reasons, and I'm hoping to get an opportunity to ask a question, and I think that will show why this space is needed. Just a little bit sad to be late to the party, but I'm here now. Thank you.
I love Black Men Build for creating this space and inviting us all here and having this astute young man talk to us on stage. And I also love my son, my mother, his mother, and my best friend.
Of course, I love my family, but I love Black people as a whole. I'm an artist. I'm an actor, a singer, a screenwriter, filmmaker, director, and such. But I choose to use my artistry to uplift our people, to get us to think, and so forth. People like tell me that I'm crazy and all that because they think I should be fighting to get to Hollywood. I've had offers to be connected to Hollywood. I really don't want them because Hollywood is evil. And I'm too Black and proud to be a part of Hollywood. Hollywood would not greenlight any of the films that I create because my films do not coddle whiteness. My films do not coddle this society or the status quo. So I would not get along in Hollywood at all. So I love us. I'm dedicated to us. That's all I want to say.
I fight for my nieces and my nephews. That's what I love. That's why I do this work. It's just that simple.
Appreciate y'all. That's a Who Do You Love section. We're going to come back and wrap up the talk and then put it to the audience for a Q&A. And again, on live stream, if you have your questions, go ahead and start to put them in the chat so we can field those. And at the end, we'll have a call to action, and then that'll be it. Right.
All right, so we'll start with the folks in the room. Anyone here have any questions for Dr. Ball?
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Brother Ball, for your presentation. I didn't hear you speak about reparations. And so can you sort of give me your take on reparations, since that you said that we've come all this far, we've not achieved the outcomes that you sort of have envisioned. So where does the conversation around reparation fit in with in your thoughts?
No, I appreciate the question. And it's something that I didn't address in the buying power work. So I appreciate that. So for me, again, the question is not, do Black people deserve reparations? The question is, similar to what I've been saying tonight, in what form would reparations take? How are reparations as a goal politicized? And to what extent does a focus on reparations, again, detract us or walk us away from the kinds of analysis and organization and work that I think needs to happen? So on the one hand, to me, reparations again points to my point about we need political power and decision making and power over public policy. Sometimes, because I'm intentionally vague with that the assumption is that I'm limiting that to mainstream electoral politics, and I'm not. But so we can maybe come back to that. But my point is that reparations, whatever form, would require a public policy, government-involved decision. So if we're going to go for that, if we're going to go to have a massive impact on the legislature of this country and public policy of this country, I'd rather the goals be expanded, made bigger. I think, and then I've gotten into some trouble with this, but I think tactically the concept of reparations needs to be expanded to include all manner of oppressed groups. If for no other reason, the level of support you need to get a bill passed at that level requires a massive amount of people. And the idea that 2/3 of the country is going to vote to give money just to Black people, given what most of the people in this country think of Black people and what most of the people in this country think of even giving Black people relief from police violence or giving some health care, I think we're going to struggle with that. So again, it's not that I don't think Black people deserve reparations, it's that I think almost reparations is too limited in its discussion and its scope. And then it's similar to my point about Black businesses, it's often taken over or taken up by people with very conservative politics. And they use the call for reparations, I think, to falsely brand themselves as taking up the mantle of some struggle that they're really not, and really they're just trying to get a payday. One thing I will bring up very quickly is that, because I see he's getting a lot of rounds because of his expertise around Palestine and Israel, but I've often thought it was interesting to the extent that Black people are encouraged sometimes to compare ourselves to Jews. I thought it was interesting that Norman Finkelstein, the expert on Judaism, well, Zionism specifically, but Jewish history, so on and so forth, his argument around that is that look at what happened to the Jews around reparations. And his argument is that Black people shouldn't do it because all that's going to happen, his point is Black people are just going to end up with a bunch of Al Sharptons getting paydays. Because if you look at the history and if you read his book, The Holocaust Industry, it's an eye-opener in terms of what happens to reparations. So so again, I don't think we should be comparing ourselves to Jews for any number of different reasons, and this would be another one. Because look at what happened. A handful of elite Jews got a whole bunch of money. People who actually lost entire families in the Holocaust got nothing. His parents, I think his mother and father were the only survivors of their family in the Nazi Holocaust. And I think he recounts that his father got, it's a pittance, it's like a few $1,000s they got. So, and yet they get to be, that it's said that Jews got reparations, when most of it went to elite Jews who are Zionists running the Zionist project here and in Israel. And then they used the call for reparations to rip off the people in their own community. That's his book details all of that. It's scandalous. So I think that's what I think, and that's why I think to whatever extent those in power encourage us to have that discussion, that's what they want. Because they're like, if you even get to the point, it'll be a payday that will benefit a handful, and it won't change the relationship, it won't change the process of exploitation and all that, and so forth. So I know it deserves much more than that as a conversation, but I do appreciate the question. I hope that was somewhat.
First and foremost, thank you, brother, for being here. And continuing our brother's final question, you spoke on a key term when you said disruption. And looking at some of the people that you reference, specifically Jay-Z, like using him as an agent of distraction versus an agent of disruption. What do you say to the people who, use the age-old adage, like, it's better to have one of us in the room than none of us in the room? So, like, how do we attack that mentality amongst the masses to say, it's not necessarily the best to have one in the room if they're going to poison the well?
I love the question. I just always have to admit I don't have a good answer. The what to do part I really struggle with. Because I found personally trying to just get to call certain of these issues out and to identify them and to explain them, for me, has become a routine challenge and a struggle. So I don't really have a quick answer to that. The shortest thing I've tried to do, like when I have quick interactions or quick little debates here and there, is to say, well, how does that work out? Like, part of the neo-colonial process is that they want us to send someone into the room that they can then manipulate, distort the messaging, and have them come back and pollute the well, as you put it. Or I might say, in terms of my argument around electoral politics, we need to become more like Malcolm X voters. And what Malcolm X said to do was organize yourself, develop the candidates and the platforms, and then vote in that way. So we need more of that, as opposed to wait for someone to be descended upon us or to say you have to vote for this one because Trump's a fascist and we're going to go. In other words, we need to be more proactive in putting whatever leader we want wherever we want that leader to be, and with the platform we've developed. Jay-Z, we didn't select Jay-Z. Jay-Z showed up there because his record label made a deal with the NFL. We weren't in the room. So, and who is Jay-Z representing? Many of us in this room are members of or parts of organizations. I bet none of us, in none of our meetings, were asked, who do you want to send to talk on behalf of you with the NFL? And none of us said, send Jay-Z. I'm willing to bet that. So how do we become a disruptor? I don't know exactly, but at some point we have to be more disruptive and say, he's not speaking for us. That one right there don't speak for us. We didn't send him. And the fact that he may look kind of like us or sound kind of, that's not, I don't know who that is. Or I listen to his music, but he's not rapping right now, and I didn't put his track on, so I don't know what he's saying right now. So what he's saying in this meeting to you is fraudulent out the gate. And at some point, it would be nice if we said, even if we liked what Jay-Z said, we can't accept it because we didn't put him there. So we're not just going to accept some accidental goodness. But what that really means is we have to be better organized. We have to we have to support better the organizations that we see. We have to advocate more people be in these organizations, and then we have to advocate that those organizations move in some way to address these concerns, and that we have people that we've sent. We need to revive those national black convention movements and all that kind of stuff. Like, we need to have like a real national, like, who's representing, who is talking for who? I don't know. I don't like any of my answers to this, by the way. I have to be honest with that. I don't. But I don't know what else to do.
Venerable July. So I'm going to push back a bit. So I guess the question as I'm sitting here is that's kind of been looming is kind of what's the alternative, right? So we are, we talk poorly about Jay-Z and his idea about like buying up Dumbo. But yeah, if you think of it as a way of, oh, he's trying to get us to be a part of the gentrification, that's one way of looking at it. Or it could just be, you guys could have gotten and taken advantage of something early. And I say that in the context of Baltimore, where lived experience, we were pushing for Black people to come and buy up part of Baltimore, and no one was doing it. You were buying stuff for $26,000 or $30,000, so it wasn't like out of reach, and people wouldn't do it. And now University of Maryland is over there, and there are all these other institutions that are buying it. And so the question that I have is like, yes, like it's easy for us to talk poorly about those people who have capitalized and gotten money, but I don't know that would be any different even from a political stance. If we got people, if we had this Black agenda and we were political, organized around politics, we've seen this happen, that our leaders also get corrupted in the same way that our economic, quote unquote, leaders get corrupted. And so we are speaking as if they're like mutually exclusive, like economics and politics aren't interrelated. And I don't know what I don't know what the answer is then. If we're gonna talk poorly about Black economics, then recognize that there's still the risk of the same thing happening on the political stance, and what do we do?
No, it's a good question. Again, part of what my argument with the book is, I don't have the answer. I don't know what all the answers are. I just know that Black capitalism and Black businesses is not the answer. And I think building on work that has been done, that I reference in here, that has been done for decades, demonstrates this. Like it's not my opinion at this point. This is not Jared's, like, I think this is what it is. This is, I think, this to me is demonstrated scientific, data-driven fact. So all I'm really saying is that isn't the answer. What the answer is, again, I don't know exactly. I think, but that's why I've been trying to point to certain ideals that we should be thinking about. Yes, political corruption can occur at any point, but it's less likely to occur if, as among someone who is themselves an conscious representative of an organized effort, beholden to an organization, as opposed to someone like Jay-Z, who was only there as a representative of Roc Nation. He was never there as a leader of Black people. He was never there as a political leader who just was taken astray, led astray. That's not what he was there for. He was always there to misrepresent and be what Glenn Ford and others called the Black misleadership class. So his whole agenda was, I'm going to get a bag. I think it was initially $20 million that went to Roc Nation to become the communicative director, whatever the relation was with the NFL. That's what he was there for. He used the language of revolution and collective struggle to blunt any potential criticism. That's different than if we formed somebody that elected or selected someone and said, you represent us when you go talk to the NFL. And then if they go talk to the NFL and say some dumbness like, we're not here to sit, we're not here to take knees, we're here to become ownership, we could be beholden, we could raise a fuss and say, we didn't send you there to say that. We sent you there to say, you all make hundreds of billions of dollars every year. I don't give a damn whether I'm flinging popcorn or running down the field. All of us should eat more. So that's all I'm really trying to say. Or I'm trying to get us to point in that direction. And I'm trying to, so the insufficient only goal of this book was to say our efforts directed towards Black business and capitalism are misdirected. We need to think and work in another direction. And that's the only way we'll get I don't pretend to have an answer. I just know that isn't it. And I do know my biggest set of criticism come from people saying, all you've done is present a problem. You don't have a solution. And I'm like, but if I present myself as having the solution, I'd be lying to you. I'd be fraudulent. Most people who do that are, I think, at minimum wrong. And maximum, they're often or at times fraudulent in their claim. So I'm just saying, we need collective effort in this, not Jared's solution. I'm just pointing to, my individual effort here has been to point to collective bodies of work that have proven that this don't work.
Thank you so much. I'm gonna build on this last response from you. So it just reminds me of this phrase that the unity of the chicken and the cockroach will only happen within the belly of the chicken, meaning that building on this system is doomed to fail, right? So we need to start from there. And I also just want to point out, I think someone had a question about us, someone in the room, one of us. Who is us, right? Because that is the core issue here, the way I see it, and the way I understood your conversation and your input is the issue is identity politics and class struggle, right? And I think this, I mean, I'm not from the US, I've been here for like almost 9 years, but I'm from East Africa. And just being, I really think that I was radicalized by just being in the US and seeing the failure of the Black community, and whether I like it or not, I'm considered as one of the Black community, right? And it's not like I don't like it or anything, but I'm just saying that we somehow failed as a community to identify our struggle, to identify racism, slavery as the backbone of capitalism, and to involve class struggle in any means that we do to struggle. And not because we didn't try it before. I'm sure there is a lot of Black revolutionaries have been in the US history and that have tried that, but we don't know them enough. Or maybe like you mentioned earlier, it seems like we were under this illusion that this will be done one time and poof, that's it, it's fixed. Although we know that, Angela Davis told us that freedom is a constant struggle. And we're trying to build Black money, Black power, and we're not changing the nature of money, the nature of production relationship, the nature of power to the individual, right? So we're using the master tool, thinking that we're going to destroy or dismantle the master house, which means we really don't know Audre Lorde, because she did tell us that you cannot use the master tools to destroy this. So I'm sorry, I just wrote a lot of points because English is not my first language, so sometimes I forget words. But like I was saying that I really like this talk and I really like this space. I'm very, very happy that I made it here today. But I just noticed that there is this tendency of talking about the enemy, and by the enemy, and maybe being a little bit, quote unquote, because I don't agree with this, quote unquote, politically correct. For example, the president earlier said that Jay-Z have been the enemy of the people, and we were like, no, that's my opinion. We don't need to apologize for that, because apologizing for that is made under the assumption that there is some sort of a connection between me and Jay-Z, and that even if I critique Jay-Z or anyone else, I should have some strong foundation to stand on. And that is not true, because to begin with, we are reproducing identity politics. We are reproducing that the solution is somehow within just the Black community. Who is the Black community? And what about the poor white people, or the poor Latino, or poor Indigenous American, or anyone else, right? So I don't think, I expect from the system to function. The system is working, right? But we are not working. We are not organizing based on politics. We are not organizing based on mutual interest. And as long as we're not doing that, this team is going to keep doing it. And some of us are going to be taken and put tokens and icon to dilute the struggle further. So the key word here, as I say it, is class struggle, even within the Black community, because there is no us. Your color is not supposed to define where you stand, right? So even when we talk, sorry, my last point. I also noticed that there is a tendency of trying to not come out necessarily against Black business, but I will come out against any business that had an employer-employee and exploitation relation within it. I don't care if you're black, white, orange, I don't care your color, you're exploiting another human being and getting their power labor. And then when we see that, then all empowered people, regardless of their color, are going to find a way forward. Again, thank you so much for this amazing talk.
No, thank you. I appreciate and I'm just writing down, I'm trying to remember everything, or some of the points, just to respond a little bit. The first question, your first question about who is the we initially is, I'm using, the we is all African descended people here in the United States, because that is the we that economists and the data folks use to put together the data about black economics, wealth, income, buying power, et cetera, and so forth. They're very Pan-African. For the most part. There are studies that get more detailed, but for the most part, those numbers, those buying power and all that numbers, that's a Pan-African total. So they're counting all African descendants, and they're counting even those of us who are mixed and identify as black. Okay, so that's the we I'm talking about. And I understand the tendency for some towards what I would consider to be reactionary or conservative identity politics, but that's not what I'm advocating. I think I've been clear even tonight in the work, but I'll be more explicit that class struggle within African black communities is essential. My preferred approach is one of colonialism, which to me satisfies all the contradictions of class, race, class, and culture are all considered and dealt with in the context of understanding an anti-colonial struggle. So that's the we, and that's sort of my approach to how I think we need to understand identity. I am a Pan-Africanist. I am all of that, but I am also wanting to be clear that there's a particular use. So there's a particular use of this mythology that targets Black America. There's one, I failed to mention it earlier, so I'm glad you gave me an opportunity to do this. There's one of the other areas increasingly I'm paying attention to is the continental African version of this. That there is very much a continental African version of black people on the continent of Africa don't need government, don't need movements, don't need politics, they need black business. And there's, even right now, people that I happen to know personally are in Ghana right now trying to build this mythology with African business people over there with this idea that we get our business together, we're gonna be good. It's a conservative Pan-Africanism, as I would describe it. So I'm not certainly a reactionary identity political person. I am a revolutionary identity person. We do have identities. We do have nations and nationalisms. I think that we can radicalize them and expand them. And I think those are the politics that have been targeted and are targeted by this mythology. I mentioned it in this second edition, but I found it very telling and wonderful when the Guardian newspaper said a year or so ago that they admitted that the state of the United States, in conjunction primarily with British intelligence, was working to suppress Kwame Ture, specifically because he had a Pan-African socialist anti-colonial message. And I use that again to say that's them admitting we don't have a problem with you starting businesses and talking about circulating dollars. Just don't have any discussions about socialism, Pan-Africanism, class consciousness, anti-colonialism. Don't do that. So I hope that addresses, I think, and the point about business exploitation, I did mention that point. I'm with you. Like, part of my point about supporting black businesses is that obviously we're not wanting to support those that are mimicking the exploitative relationships with labor and anyone else. I'm just simply saying black businesses aren't even big enough to exploit their labor because they are their own labor for the most part. The owner is the labor. So anyway, thank you. What's up, Davon? Yeah.
Hey, so Dr. Ball, good to see you.
Good to see you too, man.
Yes, sir.
Always.
So I have a statement and a question. The first is just on what you mentioned about reparations, which I generally agree with.
All right.
I think, of course, about our work in terms of reparations for the war on drugs here.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And I think that I did a talk at Coppin State for a class last Friday, and one of the things that was said to me in that conversation was, how is it that, people generally don't know that work has happened and that, the policy has moved. And a part of what I said was that I think in terms of black people being able to organize politically, I don't think that folks think we can win. And I think there's a way that that's deeply been internalized where I think some of our conversations are framed in ways that assume our inability to win as opposed to like really going deep into what is the political organizing needed to be able to deliver on some of these demands and understand the mechanics. So that's my statement. I start with that because my question goes back to a conversation I think you and I have had before about this argument about black buying power. And for me, the way that I have found it useful is that there are ways that people who aren't clear about what America is, right? America is fundamentally, racist, white supremacist, colonial, settler colony, that there's no redeeming it. And there are people who have not gotten to that place where they understand that as just being the reality, objective political reality. And so I read your argument as a way to explain why people who don't have that frame could think or would like to believe that if we just buy black enough, then things could change. So one of the things that I would like you to speak to is, and one of the things I've heard you say is like the political organizing work is hard, right? So could you speak to, in some ways, more on like a psychoexistential level, like what are some of the things that the anxieties that emerge, that would likely emerge for people if they have to accept that what is really needed is a political confrontation with America as a settler colony?
Man, every time I see these LBS cats, I get nervous, man. These dudes, man, these people are sharp, man. So first of all, to your point about the way you and your organization address yourselves to politics, policy, and reparations in particular is exactly what I'm saying or have tried to say about voting and or any, like, so you're right. There are, again, I'm not, that's why I'm saying there's so much more need to be said to your reparations question that I didn't get. So there are tactical, your approach tactically, all of that is, I'm down with all of that. So yeah. But you all are doing it as an organized, politically educated, clear consciously and politically about what you're doing. Like, I don't see your efforts as limited. I see you as taking something that exists and building from it in many radical ways. So that nuance is important. I want to just acknowledge. So I reference work at the end of the book that points to a little bit of the concerns you raise in your question. That for people to accept a new truth that would require fundamentally changing their core beliefs is a near impossibility. People will even look, according to some of the research I referenced, people will look at data that, as I'm arguing about buying power, that's why it's in the book, that clearly contradicts their initial claim. They'll recognize the contradiction. They'll say on some level, yo, I'm wrong. But to move in, to fully accept that correction and move in a new direction, if it requires a core fundamental belief change, they're not going to do it. Jared might be right about this buying power stuff and black business stuff, but consciously or not, at some level, it's like, I can't think of anything else to do, so therefore the pessimism you reference kicks in. Let's just go back to making some money and going that, And I get that. And I don't have a good answer as to how to prevent that. In fact, that's why the research I referenced it in there, because I'm saying, I get it. This is, my argument is going to have so many barriers to quote unquote success. So when people tell me, they will often say to me, your argument is pessimistic. And I'm saying, no, that's the exact opposite. I think we can win. I think if we organize ourselves and get our politics right, we will win. And this place will fall. Like there are moments I overdo it in my own head. I'm like, this is not really that tough. Like this is a paper tiger around here. And again, I do think about when I was in the Navy, my job was to be a 50 cal machine gunner on an aircraft carrier because all that high tech can't detect slow moving boats and aircraft. I was like, see, they should have put me on this gun mount because that just told me this whole thing ain't real. This whole thing, you got all this technology and all I need is a little boat and this whole 80 million ton aircraft carrier will fall. So politically, I'm saying the same thing. It looks bad. We don't have thises and that's, but if we move in certain organized way, we'll win. It's the pessimism that kicks in and says, nah, man, I'm just gonna get a business. Because it's legal, ain't nobody gonna come busting through my door, there's no surveillance over me if I start a business, I'll get white money, I'll get white friends, I get platformed. Why I wanna hang out with these radical lunatics? So I get it, I hope that, but I do wanna say again, I really appreciate what you and your crew do, and your approach is again, very different from what I'm generally criticizing, so I appreciate it. Man, these answers are terrible. I don't like any of these answers. I don't like when I'm asked about stuff that's not specific to the work, because the answers are bad. And I've been in the audience for many of these, and I'm in the audience looking at the dude on the stage. I'm like, man, that's whack. That's too vague. It's too abstract. Excuse me.
Well, evening, Dr. Ball. Thanks for joining us. My name's Taji, and I'm with Black Men Build, so we're all very pleased that you could join us tonight. I read your book a few years ago, the first edition, and it really rocked my world, as it does a lot of people's. I'm, heavy involved into local cooperative efforts, part of a food co-op initiative, and work with the local co-op lender, right? So I'm pretty bought into cooperative economics as a tool. Fortunately, your book helped kind of just illuminate the fallacies of relying on commerce and circulating the dollar as the means of moving forward. But it was an extremely difficult pill for me to swallow, right? And so to echo the last question, what does it take to get over that psychological hurdle? Because actually, for me, I could notice that hurdle a couple of times. Right, so for instance, in college I studied international relations, and I had a chance to study abroad in Santiago, Chile. I was so steeped in essentially neoliberalism and capitalism, I didn't even have the language to pick up on what my professors in Santiago, Chile were telling me, right? So they were talking to me about, again, with the economics, but solidarity economy, the cooperative movement, in Latin America, which I would say is much more politicized and political than we have here in the United States. But it wasn't until months later, years later, till I had done more learning, till I could reflect on those conversations, say, oh, that's what they're talking about, right? They're talking about broader political movements. So I couldn't even grasp it. But then once I did grasp it, there was still the psychological hurdle of, well, what does that really mean, right? So, and then I had something similar in 2020 with the book, right? Heavy into buying black, very affected by Black Lives Matter, Ferguson, all of that, right? And so it was a hard thing for me to let go of saying, especially because I'd spent time volunteering with all these orgs. We're trying to get money out of politics. We're looking at Bernie Sanders. We're doing, there's this org called Represent Us, get big money out of politics. I start volunteering with the Greens because they don't take corporate money. So I'm seeing the connection between money and politics, thinking, okay, maybe it is about accumulating capital and catching up, and then competing politically. But to let that go is very difficult. Is very, and I actually had a moment with a buddy in the room. It was a local group of folks in local co-ops, a black co-op study group, right? So we're reading Collective Courage, talking about it. And we played one of your clips discussing Du Bois in his own words, right? Explaining what he says about his experience with co-ops. and you could feel it, like it hit like a ton of bricks, like just the recoil with that news. So I guess my question is, it's to echo the last question. How do we address that psychological hurdle? How do we convince people we might actually be able to win, right? If you look at, like, well, we actually didn't win in Vietnam. We didn't actually win in Afghanistan, right? So I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
Well, I got to struggle with the we in these wars, and like, yeah, who's we? But I would also argue that I still don't think that those in power here look at Afghanistan as a loss. That's 20 years. That's $2 trillion over 20 years that got paid out to military contractors. I don't think they feel like that was a loss at all. They're quite happy. And as soon as Biden said he was ending Afghanistan, I and others were like, well, when's the next one going to kick off? That money can't get turned off, and then here we are, Ukraine and whatever else is popping off, and now Palestine. They got money going to Israel for war. So so. But again, I don't have a good answer for that. I mean, I don't. The same thing, only through, it has to take collective effort through building with people who are of like mind, who are studying with you and trying to, Yeah, go ahead.
The only thing I would add, the only thing that did help me through the learning process was being in an organization, right?
Yeah.
Being around like minds where you can bounce ideas off one another. And I just told some friends and had a conversation with one about how, especially at a time like this when it feels hard to do the right thing, right? You see what's going on around you, and it looks hard to do the right thing, maybe when it comes to whatever is politically. It could be apartheid, genocide, and it's very hard to stick out, be socially awkward, and do the right thing. It's much easier in a political organization.
Absolutely.
So I think that's my only
self-answer. No, but the flip side, I mean, you were even saying that you were talking about, you were looking at one of those clips in an organized group with other people working with collectives. So I'm sure within that group there's a reaffirming ethic and philosophy of collective cooperative economics. And this is not shade, it's just to say that it's meant to defend and recreate. When black men gather, when any organization gathers, there's an attempt to reaffirm and recommit that group to its certain core principles. So if those principles are for collective cooperative economics or something worse like black capitalism, that's what's going to get reaffirmed. And that's why we would need, I think more radical left formations to try to balance that and raise the consciousness. But how to do it, I really don't know. I mean, I've tried to be, personally, honestly, I found it a little bit, the only time I feel a little discouraged is in the attempt to try to have principled discussion and critical debate even with some people around these issues. To say, look, some of the people that get referenced all the time, I sent them my work. I knew them, I worked with them, I shared offices with some of these people. I was like, look at what I'm saying here, what's wrong with the argument? And there's no response. So there's no ability, I've found it very difficult to engage critically with those that and people have been very quick to not read my work and either omit it and ignore it altogether or say something silly about it that doesn't, but I will say I have not found one person to publicly critique my work who demonstrates having read it. And I know how crazy that sounds, but my point, and I'm only bringing that up to say that I don't have the answer. I'm trying to engage. I wrote this book. People have made all kinds. This is, with all due respect to me and my career, this is not helping my career. Like this is not a get you over the hump argument. This is not a get you platformed argument. This is not. People said I'm out here making money. Ain't nobody making money off of this. So my point is, look, I mean, so what I'm trying to say is I think how we figure out ways to have very important, even sometimes disagreeable conversations, I really don't know how to do it. I don't know how to do it. So again, I've given another horrible answer, but.
All right, we're moving to wrap it up. We got 3 questions that we're going to answer offline, and then we're going to have a call to action, and then we're going to go ahead and close it out. All right, so first question is from David Murphy. He says, do you see any hope for black people in the U.S.? If so, in what area?
The hope, again, this is going to be terrible, sounds corny, but the hope I see is in spaces like this. So if I had when I was thinking about, if I get asked that question about who do I love, I love these spaces. Yes, I love black people. Yes, I love my family. I love my daughters more than my wife, all of that. But I love these spaces where black people are just like, I'm trying to figure this out. And I have spent my entire adult life on both sides of this microphone. I sat in all of these rooms, everywhere, for years. And in part, that's why I kept hearing this buying power nonsense come up. So yeah, I love, that's where I find the hope, because I know that and I get, sometimes I feel like I could go too far. I feel like I get like we could do this for real, because we're close to figuring some things out. So yeah, this is where I find hope, spaces like this.
All right, hope, David, that answers your question. All right, BKZ has a question. He says, I'd like to know if Dr. Ball could expand on the point he made about Malcolm X after he made that business statement that people love to quote.
I mean, Malcolm X is often, and I even reached out one point to a journalist who kept referring to this in their work in a black press outlet, and they won't engage. It's like you're making with all due respect, this is an error. Look, Malcolm X at one point, particularly when he was early on in the Nation of Islam, had adopted the black entrepreneurial model, like many people had. And there's part of, and you still hear it in certain speeches and certain formations to this day, but he had that stereotypical black people spending, all we do is take our money to the white man, and if we spend it over here, we'll do better. So, and then people who are not radical like Malcolm, who would never have evolved to the radicalism that Malcolm evolved to, take that because they know, like Kwame Ture once said of Malcolm X, you can't go anywhere in black communities that talk bad about Malcolm. So you will never get away with it. Even in the most conservative black spaces, you can't get away with saying something bad about Malcolm. So what you have to do, if you are a conservative and want to talk about Malcolm, is you got to truncate him and find that one loopable clip, which I'm sure if we even saw the rest of the speech, he probably did more radical than that. Even Dr. King with the check comment was more radical than most people want to give him credit. So that's what I'm trying to say. And then if you follow Malcolm's trajectory beyond that day, in I think 1960, you see the man and you see why he became targeted and why the state basically acknowledges setting up the conditions to kill him.
All right. And our last question for the evening, Dewan Hood, he says, what are your views on supporting black-owned businesses even though their prices are high?
So, look, I was raised in a labor household, and with part of the mythology around my father was a founder of the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists, a labor organizer till he died. So even my mother's side were radical labor organizers surveilled by the state. So in part of what the contract used to be between this country, unofficially this country and its labor force, was in exchange for supporting American workers, we as consumers in the United States will happily pay a little bit more because we're supporting our families, we're supporting the people on our block and our community. So of course we'll pay a little bit more for an American product made in an American factory supporting American workers. So that ethic I have no problem taking down to certain black businesses. There's certain products I buy from black-owned businesses, soaps, lotions, all kinds of stuff. It's probably more expensive than I would get if I went to whatchamacallit and got whatchamacallit. But so what? That's fine. So again, in general, price is high or not, I think we should support black businesses. I think we should then require and encourage black businesses that do certain kinds of good and well to have a certain relationship with their own labor force in their community. And then we should also just recognize this is not the solution for us all. And I think we will have taken a step forward.
At this time, I'm gonna let Brett do a call to action, but let's give it up for Brent and Dr. Ball.
Thank you all. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ball. Where can we, before we let you go, where can folks find you and your work? How can they engage you?
Yeah, I mixwhatilike.org, at I Mix What I Like, and of course, please support Black Power Media.
We also have copies of Dr. Ball's book, The Myth and Propaganda of Black Buying Power, available here. All we ask is that you give what you can in donation to Black Men Build. And speaking of Black Men Build, we talked a lot today about what the answers are. And Dr. Ball humbly says that he doesn't have all the answers. And obviously, none of us have all the answers. But we have an answer. One of the things that has worked for me and that has worked for a lot of folks is building in community, is joining organizations where you can become politically educated, where you can learn ways to engage with the system in a different way. So if that is something that interests you, if you're interested in joining a radical, power-building political organization, go to blackmen.build, go to blackmen.build/values, sign our values pledge, go to blackmen.build/build with us if you are interested in joining a men's circle, in potentially starting a hub in your city if you're not based here in Baltimore or in one of the cities where we already have hubs. You can talk to Brother Buto or myself or one of the other brothers here from Black Men Build about the work we do. We also have copies of our free publication, Wartime, on those tables behind us. And that's it, Dr. Ball. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. This has been a great honor. Thank you all very much. Peace. Thank you. Perfect.
Hey, we're done with the live stream? Yeah. Hope everyone enjoyed it. Please take a free copy of our publication, Wartime, for yourself, for your brother, for your uncle. Dr. Ball's